The warning lights screamed red across the cockpit as Captain Taman Park fought with the controls. His ship, the Horizon's Edge, shook violently as it plunged through the atmosphere of an unknown moon. Something had gone terribly wrong during the jump to Velthara. One moment they were sailing smoothly through space, and the next. A massive energy wave had knocked them off course and fried half their systems. "Come on, Timon muttered, pulling hard on the manual controls. The automated systems were dead. Everything was manual now, and the ground was approaching fast. He could see purple forests and silver mountains through the viewport. Beautiful, he thought absently. Shame I'm about to crash into them. The impact came hard. Metal screamed. Taman's harness dug into his chest as the ship plowed through trees and dirt before finally sliding to a stop. For a moment, he just sat there, breathing hard, checking himself for injuries. Nothing broken. A miracle smoke filled the cabin. Taman grabbed the emergency kit and kicked open the side hatch. Fresh air rushed in, sweet and slightly floral. He stumbled out onto soft purple grass and looked around. The ship was ruined, half buried in the dirt with one wing completely torn off. But he was alive. He activated his comm device. Static, of course. He tried the emergency beacon. More static. Whatever that energy wave had been, it had done a thorough job of killing his electronics. Taman looked up at the sky. 2 suns, one golden and one pale blue, hung in the lavender sky. Definitely not where he was supposed to be. Well, he said to himself, find shelter, find water, find help. In that order, picked a direction, and started walking. The purple forest was dense but not impassable. Strange bird-like creatures with 6 wings watched him from the branches. Everything here seemed to glow faintly, as if the whole moon was lit from within. After an hour of walking, Taman heard water. He pushed through a thick wall of vines and stopped dead. Before him lay the most beautiful garden he had ever seen. Crystal fountains sprayed water that changed colors in the air. Flowers that looked like living gemstones grew in perfect geometric patterns. Paths of white stone wound between pools of silver liquid that reflected the twin suns. And in the center of it all, sitting on a bench beneath a tree with golden leaves, was someone. She was tall, easily 7 feet, with skin that shimmered like pearls. 4 eyes arranged in 2 pairs watched him with startled intensity. Her hair floated around her head as if under water. Deep blue shot through with threads of silver. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. She was clearly not human, and clearly someone very important. Tay-Min raised his hands slowly, showing he was unarmed. I apologize for the intrusion, he said in Galactic Standard, hoping she understood it. My ship crashed. I'm looking for help. The woman stood gracefully. She was studying him with obvious curiosity. You are human, she said. Her voice was like music, with harmonics that seemed to vibrate in his chest. I have heard of your kind, but never met one. You are very far from your territory, human, further than I intended to be, Taman admitted. I'm Captain Taman Park of the Human Diplomatic Corps. And you are? Before she could answer, a sharp crackling sound cut through the air. Taman's instincts, honed by years of training, kicked in. He saw the shimmer in the air behind the woman, saw the faint outline of someone materializing with a weapon raised. Without thinking, he lunged forward. Get down, he shouted, tackling the woman to the ground just as a blast of energy scorched the air where she had been standing. They rolled together across the white stone. Taman came up fast, grabbing the only thing he had, the emergency fire extinguisher from his pack. The assassin was fully visible now, dressed in black stealth armor, raising his weapon for another shot. Tay-Min threw the fire extinguisher as hard as he could. It hit the assassin square in the chest, and Taman triggered it remotely. White foam exploded everywhere, covering the assassin's visor and sensors. The attacker stumbled backward, firing blind. His shot went wide, hitting a fountain and sending crystal shards flying. The woman was on her feet now, moving with incredible speed. Her hand shot out, and the air itself seemed to solidify around the assassin, freezing him in place. She made a twisting gesture, and the attacker's weapon flew from his grip. Guards in silver armor burst into the garden from hidden doors, surrounding the frozen assassin. The woman turned to Taman. She was breathing hard, her 4 eyes wide. "You saved my life," she said quietly. "You did not hesitate. You did not even know who I am." "It didn't seem relevant," Taman said, checking her for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "No, thanks to you." She looked at the captured assassin, then at her guards. "Take him to the cells. Find out who sent him. And lock down the sanctuary. No one enters or leaves without my personal authorization." "My queen," the guards said in unison. Tay-Min blinked. "Queen? Oh, that explained the fancy garden." The queen turned back to him, and something in her expression had changed. There was warmth there now and fascination. "Come with me, Taman Park. You need medical attention and rest. And I find I have many questions about humans." She led him through the garden to a palace that seemed to grow out of the mountainside itself, all flowing curves and crystal spires. Servants rushed around, clearly alarmed by news of the attack. The queen spoke to them in a language Taman didn't understand, giving orders. He was taken to a room with a bed that looked like it was carved from a single piece of amber and treated by doctors, who examined him with devices that hummed and glowed. 3 days passed. Taman recovered in luxury he had never imagined. The queen, who told him her name was Isla, visited him often. They talked for hours. She was curious about everything human, about Earth, about his mission, about his people's short lives and quick passions. He learned about the Velshi Empire, about her long reign, about the complex politics of ruling 17 star systems. On the 4th day, she told him she was holding a ceremony to announce new security measures after the assassination attempt. She asked him to attend. He agreed, wearing clothes her servants had provided, made of fabric that felt like water. The throne room was enormous, filled with hundreds of beings in elaborate dress. They all turned to stare at Taman as he entered with the queen. She led him to the front, near her throne, and he stood there awkwardly while she addressed her court in Velshi. He couldn't understand the words, but he could feel the room's attention shifting between him and the queen. Then Isla switched to Galactic Standard. She looked directly at him and smiled. "This human saved my life without hesitation. He showed courage and quick thinking. He has spent these days learning our ways with respect and genuine interest. I find him worthy." She turned to face her court. "I declare before you all that Taman Park of Earth shall be my consort. This is my choice and my will." The room erupted in chaos. Taman stood frozen, sure he had misunderstood. But the queen's hand found his, squeezing gently. And he knew he had heard correctly. His simple rescue mission had just become infinitely more complicated. The silence after the queen's declaration lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the throne room exploded into shouting. Nobles in elaborate robes surged forward, their voices raised in protest. Guards stepped in to hold them back. Taman stood very still, his hand still held by Queen Isla, trying to process what had just happened. A tall Velshi man with silver markings on his face pushed to the front of the crowd. His 4 eyes blazed with anger. "My queen, you cannot be serious. This creature is barely known to us. His people have only just achieved faster-than-light travel. They are children in the cosmos, Lord Kale," Isla said calmly. "I have made my decision." "Do you question my judgment?" "I question your impulse," Kale shot back. "Forgive my bluntness, my queen, but this is madness. We know nothing of humans. They could be spies, saboteurs, anything. And you would bind yourself to one based on a single act?" Other voices joined in. Taman caught fragments. Dangerous. Unprecedented. Insult to tradition. Contamination of the bloodline. He felt Isla's grip tighten on his hand. "Enough," the queen said, and her voice carried a tone that made everyone stop. "The declaration is made. By our oldest laws, it stands unless Taman himself proves unworthy through the 3 trials. Unless he wishes to refuse now." She looked at him, and Taman saw something complex in her expression. An apology, maybe. An offer of escape. He could say no right now. Go home. Forget this ever happened. But he had spent 3 days talking with Isla. He had seen her laugh at his stories about human customs. He had watched her tend to her garden in the early morning, speaking softly to the plants. He had noticed how the servants loved her, how she knew all their names and asked about their families. This was not just a powerful queen. This was a person who had been alone for longer than human civilization had existed. "I accept," he said clearly. "I will face the trials." The room erupted again. Ela squeezed his hand once more, then let go. "The trials will begin in 7 days," she announced. "Until then, Taman Park is under my protection. Anyone who harms him will answer to me personally." The ceremony dissolved into chaos. Guards escorted Timon out through a side door, while nobles swarmed the queen, all trying to speak at once. He was taken to new quarters, much larger than before, with windows overlooking the capital city. Floating in the clouds below, an hour later, there was a knock on his door. Taman opened it to find a human woman in a diplomat's uniform. She was younger than him, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and tired expression. "Ambassador Yuna Choi," she said, stepping inside quickly. "Earth Diplomatic Corps. I got here as fast as I could when I heard what happened." "Captain Park, what were you thinking?" "I crashed," Taman said. "Saved the queen from an assassin. Got declared her future husband." "Not exactly my plan." Yuna stared at him. "The Velshi don't joke about marriage declarations. You understand that, right? Once a queen makes that kind of statement in public, she cannot take it back. It is binding law. And you just accepted to face trials that have killed candidates before?" "I know," Taman said quietly. "But I couldn't just refuse. It would have humiliated her in front of her entire court. So instead you are going to try to pass impossible tests designed to prove aliens worthy of the most powerful woman in 3 sectors." Yuna sat down heavily. "The diplomatic corps is going to have a field day with this. Earth government is already panicking. Do you have any idea what this means politically?" Before Taman could answer, another knock came. This time, it was a Velshi woman in white robes, decorated with golden symbols. She bowed to both of them. "I am High Priestess Nari," she said in perfect galactic standard. "I come with private words for Captain Park." Yuna started to protest, but Taman nodded. "It's okay." The ambassador left reluctantly. Nari studied Timon with interest. "The queen has created quite the storm, but perhaps not by accident. Our prophecies speak of a time when a stranger from a young race will stand beside the throne and bring great change. Many of us have wondered when this would come to pass." "You think I'm some kind of prophesied figure?" Taman asked skeptically. "I think prophecies are interpreted by those who live them," Nari said with a slight smile. "But I also think you have caught the queen's genuine interest, and that is rarer than you know. She has ruled for 300 years, Captain Park. She has had many suitors, all rejected. You are the first she has chosen. Consider what that means." Over the next few days, Taman learned the scope of what he had gotten himself into. The 3 trials were legendary. The trial of wisdom tested mental acuity. The trial of strength tested resolve. The trial of heart tested character. In the last 200 years, only 3 candidates had attempted them. One died during the trial of strength. One went mad afterward. One passed all 3, but then rejected the queen herself, choosing exile. Te-min also learned about the court's factions. Lord Kael led the traditionalists who opposed any change to Velshi society. They saw humans as inferior upstarts. A smaller faction, led by High Priestess Nari, believed in the prophecies and saw potential in cross-species cooperation. The largest group simply followed the Queen's will, whatever it might be. Ambassador Yuna visited daily, bringing news from Earth. The human government was trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Some wanted Timon to withdraw. Others saw an unprecedented opportunity for alliance with the Velshi Empire. Everyone had an opinion. On the 5th night, Isla herself came to his quarters. She had never done that before. She looked tired, her luminescent skin slightly dimmed. "You do not have to do this," she said without preamble. "I made an impulsive declaration. I was moved by your courage, your kindness in the garden, our conversations, but I should not have put this burden on you. The trials are brutal. If you wish, I can find a way for you to fail them with honor. You could return to your people, and I would ensure no blame fell on you or humanity. Taman poured her water from a crystal pitcher. Why did you really choose me? Isla accepted the glass, a very human gesture she had learned from him. Because when you tackled me to save my life, you did not see a queen. You saw a person in danger? Do you know how long it has been since anyone saw me as simply Isla? Not the throne, not the empire, not the symbol. Just me. She looked out the window at her floating city. I rule 17 systems. I have 100 billion subjects. I make decisions that affect countless lives, and I am completely alone. My advisors serve the throne. My nobles seek advantage. Even my friends see the crown first. But you, Taman Park, you spoke to me about your garden on Earth. You asked if I got tired of ceremonies. You made me laugh with stories about human dating customs. You saw me? Still see you, Taman said. Not just the Queen Isla, who loves poetry and plants. Who gets frustrated when her hair floats into her face? Who hums when she thinks no one is listening? She smiled, sad and warm at once. Which is why I am offering you escape. Because I care enough to not trap you. Taman thought about it. He could go home. Resume his normal life. Forget about alien queens and impossible trials. It would be sensible, but he was not feeling particularly sensible. I want to try, he said. Not because I am seeking power or status, but because I want to see where this goes. You and me, Isla. I want to know if what I feel when we talk is real. And the only way to find out is to face these trials. You might die, she warned. Everyone dies, he said. The question is what we do while we are alive. Isla set down the glass and moved closer. She reached out carefully, mimicking the human gesture of touching his face. Her hand was warm, slightly scaled, completely alien, and somehow familiar. Then I will help you prepare, she said. The trials begin in 2 days. And Taman, I want you to know, whatever happens, I will not forget the human who saw past the crown. She left then, and Taman stood alone in his quarters, wondering if he had just made the bravest or stupidest decision of his life. Probably both. The trial of wisdom took place in the Hall of Ancient Questions, a circular chamber with walls covered in glowing symbols. Taman stood in the center, while the entire court watched from elevated seats. Queen Isla sat on her throne, her face carefully neutral. Lord Kale looked smug. High Priestess Nari watched with quiet intensity. An old Velshi scholar approached, carrying a tablet that shimmered with light. Captain Park. You will be presented with the paradox of unity. Every candidate for the last 500 years has attempted to solve it. Most fail. Those who succeed offer the traditional answer, passed down through generations. You have 1 hour. The paradox appeared in the air as a hologram. It was written in Velshi, but Taman's translator implant rendered it in his mind. The question asked how a society could maintain both perfect unity of purpose and perfect diversity of thought. The traditional answer, he had learned, involved a complex hierarchy where diversity existed in layers. Beneath an ultimate unified goal, Tay-Min read it 3 times. He thought about what Isla had taught him about Velshi philosophy. He thought about human history, about all the times humanity had struggled with this exact question. And then he realized something. Cannot solve this paradox, he announced. The court murmured. Kale smiled, but Taman continued. I cannot solve it because the question itself is constructed incorrectly. It assumes that unity and diversity are opposing forces that must be balanced. But that is a false premise. True unity does not require sameness. It requires connection despite difference. He gestured to the hologram. The Velshi Empire contains 17 different species across hundreds of worlds. You are already unified in diversity. You do not share the same thoughts, the same goals, the same perspectives, yet you work together. The question should not be how to achieve both unity and diversity, but rather how to recognize that diversity is what creates meaningful unity.
Oh.
The scholar stared at him. The court was silent. Even Kale had stopped smiling. That is not the traditional answer, the scholar said slowly. No, Taman agreed. Because the traditional answer accepts the question's flawed assumption. I am rejecting the premise entirely. Unity built on forced sameness is fragile. Unity built on respected differences is strong. Humanity learned this the hard way. High Priestess Nari stood up. The trial asks for wisdom, not tradition. I believe this human has shown deeper wisdom than any answer we have recorded. After a long debate, the scholars agreed. Taman had passed the first trial by refusing to play by its rules. 3 days later came the trial of strength. Taman had expected physical combat. Instead, he was led to a small chamber with black walls and a single chair. The void chamber, the attendant explained. You will face what is inside yourself. Many strong warriors have broken in this room. You may leave at any time, but if you do, you fail. You must remain for 12 hours. They sealed him inside. For the first hour, nothing happened. Then the darkness began to move. Shapes formed in the shadows. Taman saw his mother's face, twisted in disappointment. He saw his commanding officer from his first assignment, telling him he was not good enough. He saw the face of Hyan Wu, his crew member who had died on a mission 2 years ago. You could have saved me, Hyan Wu's ghost whispered. If you had been faster, smarter, better. The visions intensified. Taman saw every failure of his life played out in vivid detail. Every person he had let down, every mistake he had made. The chamber seemed to collapse around him, pressing in. His breath came short. His hands shook. He was breaking. He could feel it. Just a little more, and he would run screaming from this room. Then light appeared. Soft, gentle light. Queen Isla materialized in the darkness, and Taman, really. Zed, this was real, not a vision. She had entered the chamber. You are not supposed to be here, he gasped. I am the queen, she said calmly. I go where I choose, and I choose to be here. She sat beside him. The visions still swirled around them, but they seemed less overwhelming with her presence. Do you know what the trial of strength truly tests? She asked. Not your ability to endure alone, but your willingness to acknowledge weakness while finding the strength to continue anyway. Taman looked at Hyan Wu's ghost. I did fail you, he said to it. I made the wrong call. I have carried that guilt every day since, but you would not want me to destroy myself over it. You would want me to learn and do better. The ghost smiled, sad but understanding, and faded. One by one, Taman faced his demons. Not by conquering them, but by accepting them. His failures were real. His mistakes had consequences. But they did not define him unless he let them. Ela sat quietly beside him through all of it, steady presence in the chaos. When the 12 hours ended and they emerged, the court was shocked to see the queen with him. She had broken protocol, but no one dared criticize her. Taman had passed the second trial. The trial of heart came 1 week later. This time, the entire court gathered in the throne room. The high priestess herself administered it. Taman Park, she said formally, you have shown wisdom and strength. Now you must show us your heart. Before you are 2 choices. 2 pedestals rose from the floor. On one sat a crystal vial filled with silver liquid. On the other sat a simple ship navigation chip. The vial contains the serum of extended life. Humans live such brief spans. This serum would extend your life to match our queen's, would have centuries together instead of mere decades. But the serum is bonded to Velthera. If you take it, you can never leave this world. Your connection to Earth would be severed forever. Nari gestured to the second pedestal. The navigation chip contains coordinates to Earth. Take it, and you may return home with honor. No shame will attach to you. But you will be forever barred from returning to the Velshi Empire. Your choice proves your worthiness, or lack thereof. Choose. The court waited. Taman looked at both options. He could live for centuries with Isla, but lose his humanity, his world, everything he had known. Or he could go home and never see her again. He looked at Queen Isla. She watched him with those 4 beautiful eyes, and he could see she had no idea which he would choose. Taman walked forward. He picked up neither the vial nor the chip. Instead, he turned to face the court. "I reject both options," he said clearly. "This trial is designed with the assumption that love requires sacrifice of self, that to be worthy, I must give up either my lifespan or my identity. But that is wrong." He looked at Isla. "If we are to be together, it should not be because I became something other than human. It should be because we find a way to bridge our differences while honoring what we each are. I will live a human lifespan. That is reality. And when my time ends, Isla will continue. That is also reality. But the years we have will be real, built on truth, not transformation." He turned back to the court. "And I will not sever ties to Earth. Humanity is part of who I am. If Isla wants me, she gets all of me. My species, my loyalties, my connections. I will not erase myself to fit into your expectations." "This is unprecedented," Lord Kale said. "The trial requires a choice between the two options." "Then I am making a third choice," Taman said. "I am choosing integrity over convenience. If that makes me unworthy in your eyes, so be it." High Priestess Nari stepped forward. She was smiling. "In 300 years of these trials, no one has ever rejected the premise. They all tried to pick the right answer. But wisdom is knowing when the question itself is wrong. Strength is standing by your truth, even when easier paths exist. And heart is refusing to compromise your core self for any reward." She turned to the scholars. "I believe this human has passed all 3 trials in ways we never anticipated. He has shown us that worthiness is not about conforming to our expectations, but about having the courage to be authentically oneself." The debate that followed was intense, but in the end, enough of the court agreed. Taman had passed the 3 trials, not by following the rules, but by showing them the rules needed to change. That night, Isla came to him again. "You could have lived for 800 years, she said quietly. "You chose decades instead." "I chose truth," Taman said. "I would rather have 50 real years with you than 800 false ones." She took his hand, a gesture she had learned from him and now used often. "Then let us make those years count." Lord Kale paced in his private chambers, his 4 eyes burning with fury. 3 of his most trusted allies sat around his table, all wearing the same expression of concern. The human passed all 3 trials. One of them said, "The wedding is set for next month." "We have failed." "No," Kale said sharply. "We have not failed. We have simply been forced to move to the next phase earlier than planned." He pulled up a hologram showing the palace layout. "I wanted the human to fail publicly, to humiliate the queen and weaken her position gradually. But since he succeeded, we must take more direct action. The queen has grown too attached to this idea of change, of opening our empire to lesser species. She is leading us to ruin. What do you propose?" Another conspirator asked nervously. "We remove both problems at once," Kale said coldly. "We stage a coup, remove the queen from power, execute the human as a spy. I will take temporary control of the empire to restore order and tradition. By the time anyone realizes what has happened, it will be too late to oppose us." That night, that ally went to High Priestess Nari and told her everything. Nari immediately went to the queen, but it was already too late. Kale had moved faster than expected. Tadashmin woke to the sound of alarms. He jumped out of bed and ran to the window. In the palace courtyard below, soldiers in black armor were fighting the queen's silver-armored guards. Explosions lit up the night. His door burst open, and Ambassador Yuna rushed in with 2 human security officers. "We need to get you out of here," Yuna said urgently. "There is a coup happening. Lord Kale is trying to take over." "Where is Isla?" Taman demanded. "The queen is in the throne room with her loyal guards, but she is outnumbered." "Captain, we need to leave now. My ship can get you to safety." "I'm not leaving her," Taman said flatly. Before Yuna could argue. More black-armored soldiers appeared in the hallway. They stunned Taman's guards and grabbed him. He fought, but they were stronger. Everything went black. When Taman woke up, he was in a cell. Issa was in the cell next to his, separated by a wall of energy. Her normally glowing skin looked dim. She was hurt. Taman, she said with relief when she saw him wake. I am glad you are alive. What happened? He asked, going to the energy barrier. Kale revealed himself. He had been planning this for months, maybe years. The assassination attempt in the garden was his doing. He staged it, hoping I would make a rash decision in the aftermath. When I chose you, he thought you would fail the trials and discredit me. But you succeeded, so he was forced into direct action. How many of your people are with him? Too many, Isla said bitterly. He has been building support among the traditionalists for a long time, but not everyone follows him. Nari and many others are fighting even now. The Empire is splitting. Its heavy footsteps approached. Lord Kale appeared outside their cells, looking triumphant. My queen, he said mockingly. Or should I say, former queen. Your reign ends tonight. You will abdicate in favor of my leadership, or I will execute your human pet while you watch. You will not get away with this, Isla said. My people know the truth. Your people will accept what I tell them, Kale said. That you went mad with obsession for an alien. That you betrayed our values. That I saved the Empire from your corruption. History is written by those who win, Isla. He turned to Taman. As for you, human, you should never have come here. You are a symbol of everything wrong with the Queen's policies. Your execution will be a message to all lesser species. Stay in your place. After Kale left, Taman examined his cell carefully. The walls were energy fields. The floor was solid. The ceiling had ventilation. He looked at the vent more closely. It was small, but maybe not too small. Isla, he said quietly, in the time I have been here, I have been learning about your palace systems. Did you know your ventilation network connects to the main computer core? Yes, but the vents are too small for Velshi, she said. But not too small for humans, Tommen said with a slight smile. We are smaller than you. It is one of our weaknesses, usually. But right now, it might be an advantage. Over the next hours, Tommen worked carefully. He used a piece of metal from his belt buckle to unscrew the vent cover. It took forever because the screws were designed for Velshi tools, not human fingers. But humans were good at improvising. He crawled into the ventilation system. It was tight and dark, but he kept going, following the maps he had memorized during his weeks in the palace. He reached a maintenance junction and found what he was looking for, communication relay, using components from his translator implant and some exposed wiring. Taman jury-rigged a transmitter. It would only work once, and the signal would be weak, but it was better than nothing. He sent out a simple message to his crashed ship's coordinates. AI, this is Captain Park. Emergency override code Alpha 7. If you receive this, activate repair protocol and come to these coordinates. His ship's AI had been designed to survive crashes and repair itself if possible. He had been secretly directing servants to bring it power, cells, and parts over the last weeks, disguised as salvaging operations. If the AI had managed to repair even basic systems, it might receive his signal. 20 minutes later, he got a response. A series of beeps in Morse code. The AI was coming to Dashman, made his way back to the cells, and waited. An hour later, explosions rocked the palace. His ship, barely held together with welds and patches, crashed through the outer wall. The AI had armed itself with the ship's emergency weapons. It was not much, but it was enough to create chaos. Ambassador Yuna and her human team, along with High Priestess Nari and loyal Velshi soldiers, took advantage of the confusion to attack. A fierce battle erupted in the corridors. Taman's cell lost power in the chaos, and he kicked the door down. He freed Isla, and together they fought their way toward the throne room. Kale was waiting there with his strongest supporters. The chamber became a battlefield. Isla moved like lightning, her royal combat training on full display. Taman could not match her in physical ability, but he could think tactically. He coordinated the defenders using his cum device, positioning them like pieces on a chessboard. Left flank is weak, he told Nari. Push there. Kale's forces are concentrated at the main door. Send a team through the service entrance, he directed Yuna. Slowly, carefully, they turned the tide. Kale found himself surrounded. He fought desperately, but it was over. Queen Isla herself subdued him, her hand on his throat. He failed, she said coldly. And now you will face trial for treason. Kill me, Kale spat, or I will return, No Taman said, stepping forward. We are not executing you. You will have a fair trial, a chance to speak your grievances publicly. Justice, not revenge. That is what separates civilization from chaos. Isla looked at him, then nodded. My consort speaks wisely. You will be tried according to our laws, Kale, and you will see that change does not mean abandoning justice. In the aftermath, the palace was secured. Kale's supporters were arrested. The empire was shaken, but intact. And Taman sat in the garden with Isla, both of them exhausted and wounded, but alive. You saved me again, Isla said softly. With a crashed ship and improvised technology, humans are good at improvising, Taman said. It is our specialty. She leaned against him, a gesture of trust and affection. Then, I chose well. The repairs to the palace took weeks. During that time, the Empire held its breath. Kale's trial was public, broadcast across all 17 systems. He was given every opportunity to present his case, to explain his actions. In the end, the court found him guilty of treason, but spared his life, sentencing him to exile on a remote world. It was a controversial decision, but it sent a clear message. The new Velshi Empire believed in justice, not vengeance. With the crisis past, attention turned to the upcoming wedding. The court began preparations for a ceremony that would unite two species for the first time in known history. Dignitaries from across the galaxy requested invitations. Earth sent a delegation led by the Secretary of Interstellar Relations. Everyone wanted to witness this unprecedented event. But in the quiet of Isla's private garden, away from all the politics and ceremony, Taman and Isla faced a more personal question. They sat by the fountain where they had first met, watching the colored water spray into the air. Isla's hair floated gently around her face. Taman had learned this meant she was uncertain about something. We should talk, she said finally. Really talk, without the court, without the pressure, without the expectations. Just you and me. Taman nodded. He had been thinking the same thing. Do you want this? Truly. Or did circumstances push us into something neither of us really chose? Isla considered the question carefully. When I first declared you my consort, it was impulsive. I was moved by your courage, fascinated by your difference, drawn to how you saw me as a person rather than a symbol. But was it love? I did not know. How could I? We had known each other for days. She looked at him with all four eyes. But then you faced the trials, not for glory or power, but to understand what we might be. You endured the Void Chamber's torments. I broke protocol to sit with you because I could not bear to leave you alone in that darkness. You rejected easy answers because they would require you to be less than yourself. And when Kale tried to destroy us both, you escaped using human ingenuity and saved me with strategy instead of strength. Her hand found his, the gesture natural now. I have had 300 years to understand myself. Taman Park. I know what I feel. The question is, what do you feel? Taman watched the fountain for a moment, gathering his thoughts. I am a human man who has lived 32 years. I have been on Velthara for less than 2 months. Everything has happened so fast. Part of me wonders if I am caught up in the adventure, the excitement, the sheer impossibility of it all. He turned to face her. But then I remember our conversations. How you laugh at my terrible jokes. How you taught me to read Velshi poetry, and I taught you to understand human music. How you hum when you think no one is listening. How you worry about being a good ruler, but never talk about wanting power. How you remember the names of servants' children. He squeezed her hand. I am in love with you, Isla. Not the queen of the Velshi Empire. You, the woman who sits in her garden at dawn. Who gets frustrated when her hair floats into her face during serious meetings. Who reads old books and grows flowers and sometimes feels desperately alone despite being surrounded by millions. But I will die, he said quietly. Humans live such short lives compared to Velshi. You will have perhaps 50 years with me, maybe 60 if I am lucky. and then you will have centuries more without me. Is that fair to you?" Ela smiled, sad but genuine. "Fair? Taman, I have lived 300 years. Do you know how much of that time I have felt truly alive? Truly seen? Truly myself?" She held up her free hand, fingers spread. "Perhaps 5 years total, scattered across 3 centuries, and in the last 2 months, I have felt more alive than in the previous 50 years combined." She moved closer to him. "I would rather have 50 real years with you than 800 more years alone on my throne. Quality, not quantity. You taught me that. It is a very human philosophy." "Then we really are going to do this," Timon said. "Get married. Build a life together. Despite everything, we are," Isla confirmed. "But on our terms, not the court's." "I have been thinking about your third trial answer. You said if we are to be together, we must bridge our differences while honoring what we each are. You refuse to give up your humanity or your connection to Earth." She stood, pulling him up with her. "I have a proposal. A real one this time. Not an impulsive declaration. I want to marry you, Taman Park of Earth. But more than that, I want to build something new. A government that spans both our worlds. A court that rotates between Valthara and human space. A future where species work together as equals, not as ruler and subject." "You were talking about revolutionizing the entire structure of the empire," Taman said. "Yes," Isla said simply. "Kale was wrong about many things, but he was right that I am leading the empire to change. I am just not leading it to ruin. I am leading it to evolution. And I want you beside me, not as decoration or trophy, but as a true partner. Earth's ambassador and the Queen's consort. My husband and my equal." Hey. Taman thought about it. This was not just a marriage. This was a political revolution. A cultural transformation. It would be difficult, controversial, probably dangerous at times. There would be opposition from traditionalists on both sides, human and Velshi alike. It would also be the most important work of his life. "I am in," he said. "Let us change the galaxy together." The wedding took place 1 month later in a ceremony that blended human and Velshi traditions. Ela wore robes of living starlight. Taman wore a formal suit from Earth, modified to complement her outfit. High Priestess Nari officiated in Velshi. Ambassador Yuna read vows in human languages. Representatives from both species and a dozen other civilizations attended. When Isla and Taman exchanged their vows, they wrote them together, mixing philosophies from both cultures. They promised not to complete each other, but to stand beside each other. Not to become the same, but to celebrate their differences. Not to rule together, but to serve together. The kiss was awkward. Velshi did not kiss. But Isla had practiced, and when their lips met, the crowd erupted in cheers from the humans and harmonious humming from the Velshi. 5 years later, transformation was undeniable. The royal court now spent half its time on Valthera, and half in a specially built space station near Earth. Human advisors worked alongside Velshi nobles. Exchange programs sent young people of both species to learn from each other. Trade and cultural sharing flourished. Taman had become more than just the Queen's husband. He was Earth's chief ambassador, a skilled negotiator, and a teacher who trained both human and Velshi diplomats in cross-cultural understanding. He had helped establish the Galactic Cultural Exchange, an organization dedicated to peaceful cooperation between species. Isla had grown too. She was less isolated now, surrounded by genuine friends and colleagues who saw her as more than just her title. She laughed more. She spent less time on rigid ceremony and more time on actual governance. She was happier. On their 5th anniversary, they stood together in the garden where they first met. The palace had been rebuilt exactly as it was, including this quiet sanctuary. Isla had insisted on it. "Do you have regrets?" Ela asked him. It was a question she asked every year on this day, Taman said, and meant it. "You only that we do not have more time," she said quietly. 5 years is such a short period in my life, and we only have perhaps 45 more. "Then we should make them count," Taman said. He had aged slightly in 5 years, tiny lines appearing at the corners of his eyes. Isla looked exactly the same as the day they met. She would look the same for centuries after he was gone. It was a reality they both lived with. "Come," Isla said, taking his hand. "The Galactic Assembly is meeting today. They want to discuss expanding the cultural exchange to 10 more species." "Let them wait 5 minutes," Taman said. "I want to stay here with you a moment longer." She smiled and settled against him. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the fountain, feeling the warmth of the twin suns. Two beings from different worlds, different species, different lifespans, but in this,